I'm Russell.
And I'm Ken.
As a leader, it's your role to help your team achieve their best. It's not your job to take on their responsibilities or to micromanage them. In fact, doing so is often counterproductive because it shuts your employees down and leads them to think they can't do it correctly for themselves. Worse, it makes you into a bottleneck, leaving you responsible for an increasing number of decisions and actions.
Instead, you can think of yourself as the coach who stands behind a bench filled with high-performance athletes. The coach doesn't get onto the ice and play the puck for them, or get onto the field and block the tackles for them. In fact, the coach is the last person you want making those small decisions. Instead, the coach's job is to train the team so that they can make the best decisions possible in the moment.
By doing this, you'll help them make better decisions, solve problems that are holding them back, learn new skills, and otherwise progress their careers. The more effectively the coach coaches, the less he or she has to do at the lowest levels, and the more time the coach can spend on strategy and performance-related issues.
Some people are fortunate enough to get formal training in coaching. However, many people have to develop this important skill through trial and error and by following their instincts.
If you've been appointed a leader, chances are that your instincts are likely very good already.
The beauty about working with a coach model is that you don't need to be an expert in every specific situation to be able to coach your team. The coach model offers a framework with general questions to elicit goals, obstacles, options, and more without ever needing to offer advice or force any particular direction. To use that sports analogy again, you don't need to be a Tiger Woods to coach one.
Let's take a look at the coach model. COACH stands for current situation, outcomes, possible actions, critical questions that lead to a choice, and how to be accountable. So let's expand on each of those points.
Describe the current situation. Your first task as a coach is to achieve a shared understanding of the current situation. This is harder than it seems, because many times you and your employee may have different interpretations of the problem at hand, the state of the company's fortunes, or the objectives of the company as a whole. In fact, this first step is where most communication breaks down. If a leader and a team member don't agree on the fundamentals, then conflict is bound to arise later. But because these assumptions are rarely, if ever, fully articulated, then both parties can feel unheard and frustrated. So, begin by asking probing questions to ensure that you are both on the same page. Questions such as, what impact is the current situation having? How do you think other people at work are feeling at the moment? What is your biggest priority at work at the moment? In which aspects of your work are you least comfortable and confident, or most confident? After each question, ask for facts and concrete examples to illustrate the current situation. Be sure to identify future consequences if the behavior continues. Often, this step is valuable in and of itself. A person confronted with a difficult workplace issue may be confused as to what's really going on, or they may be overwhelmed by the situation, or they may simply not be able to see the forest for the trees. A guided conversation with a neutral third party, a coach, that helps them see the situation clearly can be rewarding and helpful, and that may even be sufficient.
Once the current situation is defined, agreed upon, and accepted, then you can begin to discuss the desired outcome. This is what the future might look like for the team member if they let go of their old way of doing business. Usually your team member will have put some thought into what they want to achieve and may be presenting you with one or two desired outcomes. But often our view of what is possible is limited when we are surrounded by trees or stuck inside the box. As a coach, you can play an invaluable role in helping your team member expand their range of options by asking open-ended, big-picture questions. For example, if anything was possible, what would you do? What are the key outcomes you want to achieve in your work? What are the greatest opportunities for improvement in your current role? Or where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Use open-ended questions to get a desired outcome that does more than simply address the symptoms. Strive to help them dig out and solve root causes. Don't quit until you get your employee to identify a solution or aspiration that excites them. Once common ground has been established or re-established, then the real meat of the coaching can begin.
Brainstorm possible actions. Once you and your team member have identified the outcome you desire, you can start to brainstorm some actions that are going to get you there. Some useful prompts might be, what would you do if time were not an issue? What will you do differently tomorrow to meet these challenges? What do you need from me or others to help you achieve this? Describe your ideal job. How does it differ from what you're doing now? A moment ago, I called these questions prompts because I want to encourage you to think in terms of prompting your team member to come up with a solution themselves. It's much wiser to brainstorm in conjunction with your team member instead of ordering them about. Then you are allowing them to come up with solutions that they can really get behind. Be sure to encourage ownership of the change by brainstorming these possible future actions with the team member. Don't feel that you need to have all the answers. Remember, if you need to be the smartest person in the room all the time, then you're going to be the one doing all the heavy lifting all the time.
Ask critical questions that lead to a choice. It's one thing to come up with a list of possible actions, but how do you know which course of action is likely to lead to success, or the right kind of success? This is where two brains really are better than one, and where you can help your team member evaluate the actions you've set out by asking critical questions that lead to a choice. Questions such as, what has contributed to your success so far? What are the pros and cons of your approach? On a scale of 1 to 10, what is the likelihood of your plan succeeding? What are you doing really well that is helping you get there? If everything goes well, how will your life be different? We find that this is where most other coaching models end. Having identified a way forward, these models leave the team member to move forward on their own.
Your final and most essential step is to look for ways to ensure that your team member is accountable for success. Note that we have not said that you should look for ways to hold them accountable. Instead, we strongly urge you to help the team member look for ways to hold themselves accountable. You can start by asking questions such as these. What 3 actions can you take this week? What is holding you back from achieving more? Who else can you share your plan with to help you be accountable? What gaps do you have in your skills to achieve your objective? How will you fill those gaps? On a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to your plan? What would it take to make it a 10? What will you do to ensure that this becomes a regular part of how you think and behave? Work out a check-in schedule with them in advance and check in periodically at a high level. At each subsequent meeting, focus on the last 2 steps, critical questions and how to continue to be accountable. Probe with critical questions to drill down and search for warning signs that they may have missed something. And make sure that they are being accountable to themselves and to you.
These coaching conversations are likely to be slower and more deliberate the first few times you use the model, both because you will be getting used to the model, but also because your employees may be unused to having such detailed questions and consultation asked of them. That's okay. You'll find that once you've set the tone during the first several conversations, that the process will become second nature for you and your team. You may also find that some of these conversations may need to be executed over more than one session. For instance, if a team member comes in a state of great distress, then identifying the current situation and the desired outcome may take a long time, and doing so may be sufficient objective for a single coaching session. Or it may be desirable to brainstorm possible actions and then sleep on it and resume the conversation the next day or after the weekend before proceeding to ask critical and challenging questions. You'll have to read the tone for the conversation carefully and rely on signals from your coachee on how best to proceed. In either case, when you resume, it's always a good idea to use the coach model to review where the team member is in any given conversation and to ensure that the team member has a clear understanding of the current situation and the agreed upon outcome. Encourage them to restate in their own words. If there is any disconnect or slippage from previous conversation, it's important to review.
A good way of thinking about the coach model is to think about how you'd plan a journey. First, you establish where you currently are by agreeing upon the current situation. Then decide where you're going by defining the ideal outcome.
Make a map by brainstorming possible actions. Choose a route by asking critical questions that lead to a choice of direction. And be sure to periodically check landmarks against the map by finding how to be accountable.
This way, you're not just setting out in a random direction, you are ensuring that all your team members are heading in the same direction and that they are prepared for the obstacles that they could meet along the way.
And that they're committed to making the journey.